Are you serious? Are you serious? What? Yes, there is a Republican Congressman, Louis Gohmert, who's calling for the United States of America to blow all Iranian facilities up and completely eliminate their ability to produce a nuclear bomb. Here is his own words as he was being interviewed. Quite amazing, actually. Here we go. Listen closely.
A senior U.S. lawmaker calls for military action against Iran despite an interim nuclear agreement. Republican representative from Texas, Louis Gohmert, says Washington should destroy all Iranian nuclear facilities.
You've got to open it up to the IAEA and to U.S. inspectors, and we got to make sure that you've gotten rid of everything. Otherwise, let's blow them all up, all the sites up, until we are satisfied we've eliminated them as a threat.
Now, when he said that, the congressman also called on the Obama administration to increase the military support to Israel in case Tel Aviv decides to launch a military strike against Iran. We need to get them the F-35s they need, said Gohmert. We ought to give them our best bunker-busting equipment because I think the Israeli Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, has the will and the credibility to be a threat. The threat is not the first one by the American lawmakers. Last year, it was Michelle Bachmann and Dunker Hunter issued similar warnings to Tehran, Iran. Now, during a speech at the Zionist Organization of America Gala in November, Michelle Bachmann said Iran's nuclear facilities must be bombed. In December, Duncan Hunter urged the United States government to use tactical nuclear weapons to destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities if military action becomes necessary. The ongoing threats from hawkish U.S. officials come although Iran and the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, which is the United States, Britain, Russia, France, and China, plus Germany, which is the 6th superpower nation, struck the 6-month accord in Geneva with the Iranians back on November 24th of 2013. So, folks, what's happening here is what the Obama administration's Middle Eastern policy is not the same as half or more of the U.S. lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and certainly not the view of at least half of America. But what's going on here? Why is it that President Barack Obama and United Kingdom Prime Minister David Cameron, why are they both going down the same path of appeasement as it relates to radical Islamist jihadists? Now, I have another report here, and of course, I want to thank Joshua for sending this report to me. I also received a report from Steve Clausen, and this is the Jerusalem Post. Can I have some coffee? Do you have your coffee? Calm down, because this is very serious. We need to review it closely. Because if you read Psalms 83, it tells you that the enemies of Israel want to wipe them off from history. I mean, the book of Psalms, and I'll read it here in a moment. Psalms 83 tells you that they begin to conspire against Israel. They come together in one consent. They are confederate against Israel to remove Israel, that the nation of Israel may be no more in remembrance. In other words, never to be remembered again. But here's what the Jerusalem Post article says. It's called Israel in the Eye of the Hurricane. Well, an upheaval sweeps into the country after country. Listen to this. You guys know I talked about the Arab Spring for 3 years. It was January of 2011. I was right here on YouTube telling you that you were watching Daniel chapter 11, 41 through 45. I told you that Egypt would fall, Tunisia would fall, that Libya would fall, that Yemen would fall, and that eventually Syria would fall. Now, Assad is still technically the president, but his country's fallen. It isn't functioning anymore. It's not a country. It's a war zone, and Damascus is a slaughtering house for Christians. Now, as the upheaval sweeps into the country after country of the Middle East, the epidemic of instability has become the order of the day, with no end in sight. Egypt and Tunisia seem permanently on the verge of a civil war. Syria is in the midst of a bloody civil war. Libya and Yemen are disintegrating before our very eyes. Lebanon and Iraq seemingly are not far behind going to a civil war themselves. Unrest is seeping into Algeria, Morocco, the Sudan, and even Jordan. Not even the oil-rich nation of Saudi Arabia or the smaller Gulf states seem immune. Long-established certitudes about the regional order are no more, having been supplanted by an Arab Spring that produced neither a summer of democracy. That was a joke. When Obama was going around saying this is the Arab Spring of democracy, that's the biggest joke we've ever heard. Really, seriously. I'm not being disrespectful to the president, because I don't know who gave him that tagline. But that was the biggest joke that's ever been uttered from the lips of a leader of the free world. It's the furthest thing from democracy, folks. It's become a Sharia law bloodbath. It's a battle for radical Islamic supremacy. There's nothing democratic about any of the things that's happened in Tunisia or Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Syria, now Iraq, Afghanistan. There's nothing there. So, and it is biblical. And then you got to throw Turkey in there. Now you're going over into Ezekiel. I mean, you're reading what what about Ethiopia? And what about Iran? You just heard what he said. Iran's still building. They're still enriching uranium as I'm sitting here talking to you. Iran is just turning those centrifuges. They're just going in. They're enriching uranium. It doesn't matter that the 6 superpowers signed a deal with those guys. They're still making uranium. Now, here's what the Bible said. 2 scriptures. First, Psalms. Psalms 83 says, "Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace. And be not still, O God." And he won't be, believe me. "For lo, thy enemies have made a turmoil," or confusion, or a cry. "And they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They've taken crafty counsel against thy people, and against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee." Now that is exactly what's taking place right now between those nations. But if you go to Daniel and you read Daniel chapter 11, 41 through 45, you knew this day was coming. The Arab Spring told us this. Told us that we would see these nations falling. Now let me read it for you. 5 verses. Daniel chapter 11, 41 through 45. "He," speaking about the Antichrist spirit, "he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown," which I just read them to you. Listen to this. "But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief children of Ammon," talking about Jordan. Okay? "He shall stretch forth his hand," Antichrist spirit again, "and also the countries, and upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape." And we definitely see that. They've had 2. They've thrown out 2 presidents in 3 years, and they're in a state of chaos. "But he shall have power over the treasuries and the gold and the silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans," they've fallen also, "and the Ethiopians," they're having the same issues starting to rise up, "shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And that's exactly what our appeasement, foreign policy direction that we're going, this is exactly what we're seeing manifest, is the biblical ancient prophecies of Daniel and King David in Psalms 83. So what I'm telling you is what this lawmaker is saying, what he is saying actually is very, very, very powerful, folks. Very powerful. Is he right? Nobody wants to have a war with Iran. But do we sit back and just, what is the plan? What is the plan?
From nuclear agreement, Republican representative from Texas, Louis Gohmert, says Washington should destroy all Iranian nuclear facilities.
You've got to open it up to the IAEA and to U.S. inspectors, and we got to make sure that you've gotten rid of everything. Otherwise, let's blow them all up, all the sites up, until we are satisfied we've eliminated them as a threat.
Now, I am not a warmonger. I don't want war. I hate war. I mean, it's the worst thing ever, but it's something that we're always going to have. Nation, Jesus said nation would rise against nation and kingdoms against kingdoms. I hate it. I have sons in the military right now, and I don't want them to. I had a son fight for a whole year in the surge in Afghanistan. And I spent every night awake praying that he came home. I'm telling you, I hate war. I hate hearing about the murdering and the atrocities and what's happening right now in Damascus. But do you sit here and just let Israel just sit there like a time bomb to be attacked, just like a kitten in a cage? Trust me, Israel's going to take care of itself, whether we do or not. And above all, and this I can promise you, above all, God has a everlasting covenant, and he will take care of the land of Israel. This is the last days. Israel will never fall again. It is the city of the great king. It's changed hands 14 times. I mean, look, the Muslims, empires of different groups, the Crusaders have had charge of it. Egypt's been in charge of Jerusalem. The Persians have had Jerusalem. The Turkish empires, the Ottoman empires. I mean, are you serious? But never again. It was 14 generations to David, to King David, and from King David's throne to Christ, to the carrying away of Babylon, I should say, was another 14 generations. From the carrying away of Babylon to Christ was another 14 generations. And Jerusalem has been taken over 14 times. This is the last time. It will not fall. It will be attacked. Zechariah 14, by the way, says it will be attacked. But it also says that Christ will return. I've got something to talk about that a little bit later in my show today. I want to talk about that, the Mount of Olives splitting in half. I want to talk about the healing waters that will flow. I want to talk about that, but we'll get to that today in my live broadcast. So don't miss today's show from 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. And also, don't miss Friday's show. Wally Shobat, the former PLO member of the PLO, an Arabic man that lived just outside of Bethlehem who became born again, quit the PLO, married a Christian woman, and is now a servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. He is an expert on what's going on in the Middle East. Of course, he was once a member of the PLO. He's going to share with us. He'll be live on my broadcast this Friday at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. Don't miss it, www.paulbegleyprophecy.com, or be listening on the live stream channel I have, or the new live stream channel, or Blog Talk Radio, or use your cell phone and call this number 347-324-5208. I have 250 phone lines for everyone who wants to listen by cell phone. That's 347-324-5208, so that you don't miss Friday's broadcast with our guest from the Middle East, Walid Shobat, the former PLO member, now born again. He's going to tell you what they're doing in the Middle East. The Christians that are being killed, their blood is being sold in little bottles for $100,000 each to Saudi Arabians to wash their hands in the blood of Christians. And he's also going to tell you about the breaking news on Hillary Rodham Clinton, charges against her in Egypt. He broke both these stories and more. We'll be right back.